The Earth was no longer a home. It was broken, polluted, and dangerous. Most humans now lived on space stations or served alien worlds as workers or soldiers. Daniel was one of them. He had no family left, no money, and no future. He worked in a dusty repair bay fixing alien cargo ships, earning just enough to survive one day. Something strange arrived for him, a sealed message with a golden mark. It was from the Zarellan court, a powerful alien empire known for their honor, mystery, and beauty. Inside, it said only this: "You have been chosen to marry a noble lady of the House of Varax. Accept, and you will be granted a home, wealth, and citizenship. Decline, and the offer will never return." Daniel thought it was a joke. Why him? He was no one. But when he asked around, the other workers looked at him in shock. "No one refuses the House of Varax," one alien warned. "Their women are not ordinary." There was only one condition: he would not be allowed to see her, speak to her, or even learn her name until the wedding night. He would be transported in silence and arrive on her planet just before the ceremony. The offer felt risky, strange, maybe even dangerous. But Daniel was tired of surviving. He wanted a reason to live again, so he said yes within hours. Guards came to escort him. He was cleaned, dressed in fine robes, and placed on a private star cruiser. The ship was silent inside, almost like a tomb. The alien servants wouldn't speak to him, only bow politely. He noticed they wore the same silver badge with a serpent wrapped around a flame. It was the symbol of House Varax during the journey. Daniel tried to imagine who his bride could be. He had heard rumors about Zarellan women. Some said they were graceful warriors. Others whispered they were part machine. Some said they were cursed. One old human had once told him, "Never marry a Zarellan woman unless you're ready to die for her." Days passed in silence. Then the ship arrived. The planet below was red and glowing with rivers of light. Tall towers reached the skies, and strange birds circled above. It looked like something from a dream or a nightmare he was led to. A palace made of black stone. The halls were quiet, filled with alien art and statues of women holding blades and books. The guards there had glowing eyes and moved like shadows. Daniel's heart beat fast, but he didn't turn back. He had made his choice in a large chamber. He was dressed again, this time in ceremonial armor with gold lining. The priest-like alien who spoke the marriage rites was blind. Everything about the ceremony was silent, formal, and strange. Then finally, she entered, his bride. Covered in a silver veil from head to toe, her steps were smooth, almost floating. She said nothing, only stood before him. The priest raised his hand. The vow was completed with only a single word: bound. The crowd of silent watchers bowed their heads. It was done. Daniel was now the husband of a noble alien woman, yet he had not even seen her face. That night, he was led to their shared chamber. The walls were lit with soft blue crystals, and the air smelled like wild roses. He sat on the edge of the large bed, waiting. His heart pounded as the door slid open slowly. She stepped in, still covered in the veil. She stood in front of him for a long time. Then, without a word, she raised her hands and slowly removed the silver cloth. Daniel's breath caught. She was beautiful, tall, with glowing violet eyes and pale, perfect skin. But her beauty was strange, almost otherworldly, and on her neck, chest, and arms were glowing scars, like lightning trapped under her skin. She looked at him, her voice soft but firm. "Do not ask me about the scars tonight." Daniel nodded, unsure what to say. She sat beside him, but kept a small distance. They said nothing for a long while outside the window. 2 moons rose over the glowing rivers. Inside, 2 strangers sat in silence, married, but still worlds apart. And yet, something in Daniel's chest stirred. Not fear, not regret, but something like hope. This was not what he expected, but something told him this story was only beginning. The room was quiet, but Daniel's thoughts were loud. The glow from the twin moons slipped through the crystal windows and painted soft light across the floor. His bride sat beside him, her back straight, her face calm, but her eyes too still. She hadn't moved since she said not to ask about her scars, and Daniel hadn't. Not because he didn't want to, but because something in her voice told him that if he did, she might disappear. They were husband and wife, but strangers in every way. She hadn't even told him her name. Daniel wanted to speak, to ask something simple, something kind. But when he opened his mouth, she turned her head slightly and said, "Not tonight." Her voice was soft, musical, but cold, like wind over frozen lakes. Daniel leaned back against the wall, unsure what to do. He had married a woman without seeing her. Now he had seen her. Now he had seen her hand, still didn't know who she really was. The glowing scars on her arms pulsed softly, as if alive, and every time they brightened, she seemed too tense. She hid it well, but not well enough. Hours passed, and she didn't sleep, neither did he. When the crystals dimmed to mark midnight, she stood suddenly. Without looking at him, she whispered, "Rest, Daniel, I will return." Before the light, then she walked out of the room and the door closed silently behind her. Daniel sat there for a moment, unsure what he had just heard. His name, spoken by her lips, sounded strange and heavy. It was the first time she had said it. The way she said it didn't sound like hate. It sounded like sadness or warning. He stood up, curious now, and slowly stepped toward the door. It was locked, not with bolts, but with something invisible, alien tech maybe. He touched the panel, but it didn't react to him. They had sealed him in. He turned and stared at the wall, where her robe had brushed past. She had moved like someone trained for battle, like she was born to fight. But she carried something heavy on her shoulders. Daniel didn't know what, but it was something more than scars. Eventually, he slept. When he woke up, she was standing by the window, arms behind her back, staring out at the rising suns. She had returned silently, like a shadow. He watched her for a moment. She looked strong, tall, graceful, but there was still a weight around her like invisible chains. She turned slowly and looked at him. "You will be given a tour of the grounds today," she said. "I will not be joining you." Daniel nodded. "May I ask your name now?" She paused, her eyes unreadable. "You may call me Soraya," she said at last. It sounded ancient and powerful, like it had once been whispered across galaxies. Servants came and led him through halls of black stone and white fire. The palace was filled with strange art, long tapestries of wars and peace, and glass walls that changed color as he walked. Outside, alien trees floated above the ground, their roots dancing in the wind. Everything was beautiful, but also distant. When he asked one of the guards about Soraya, the guard just shook his head. "She was not always like this," the guard muttered. But her return changed everything. Before Daniel could ask what that meant, the guard walked away. Later, back in the chamber, Soraya wasn't there. Instead, a small package rested on the bed. Inside, it was a ring, simple, but glowing softly with the same light as her scars. There was a note, written in neat alien script, but translated automatically into human language. It read, "You are now part of something that was never meant to exist. I will protect you as long as I can." Daniel stared at the ring in his hand. He had only been on this planet for a day. He had married a woman without seeing her, and now, even after seeing her, he realized he hadn't even begun to understand her. Outside, the sky turned orange as the second sun rose higher. Somewhere deep in the palace, a door creaked open, and the sound of metal boots echoed across stone floors. Soraya was moving again, but where she went, and what she did in those hours, she vanished. No one would say. Daniel stood by the window, holding the glowing ring. He was no longer just a lost human with no future. He was now the husband of a woman who walked like a queen, carried scars like a warrior, and hid secrets like a ghost. And, for some strange reason, he didn't feel fear. He felt drawn in deeper. Whatever this was, it was far from over. Daniel woke up in the middle of the night. Again, the room was cold, even though the crystals on the wall were glowing warm blue. Something felt wrong. He couldn't explain it, but the silence was too perfect, like even the air had stopped breathing. He sat up and listened. There it was, a whisper. Soft like a breeze, but not natural. It wasn't coming from inside the room. It was coming from somewhere beyond the wall. He stood up quietly and walked toward the direction of the sound. As he passed the wall beside the window, a strange thing happened. One of the crystal panels flickered, and a small piece of it slid. Open without a sound, behind it, a narrow tunnel appeared, hidden in plain sight. No one had told him about this. No one had said this part of the palace even existed. He looked back once, wondering if Soraya was watching, but she was nowhere in sight. The room was empty, and the tunnel seemed to be calling him. Daniel took a deep breath and stepped inside. The air was colder here. The walls were metal, not stone, and they had faint markings etched into them, symbols that pulsed dimly like breathing lights. As he walked further, the whisper grew louder. It wasn't a voice exactly, more like a memory trying to speak. The tunnel ended at a tall door, unlike any he'd seen before. It was black, smooth, and covered with the same glowing scars Soraya had on her skin. His hand moved on its own, pressing against the surface, and the door slid open. What he saw inside made him forget to breathe. It was a large chamber, filled with machines floating, blinking, humming, but broken. Some were shattered, others dripping glowing fluid. And in the middle of the room stood something worse, a row of glass tanks, tall as giants, and all empty except one. That one still had a body inside. A female form, floating in blue liquid. Her skin was pale, her eyes closed. Her arms crossed over her chest. Her body looked exactly like Soraya's. Her face was burned. Her markings were broken, and one of her arms was missing. Daniel stepped closer, heart racing. A metal plaque was attached to the tank. It read, Subject 7, a hybrid protocol test. Subject, not person, not name, just a number. He stumbled back, pieces of the puzzle crashing in his mind. Soraya had said nothing, but this chamber was screaming. They had used her. They had done things to her. Maybe they had cloned her, experimented on her, broken her, and stitched her back together. The tank hissed suddenly, making him jump, and behind him he heard footsteps, slow, calm, deadly. Soraya stepped out of the shadows, her expression blank. She was wearing dark robes, and her eyes were glowing softly, not with warmth, but with something buried deep inside. She didn't look surprised to see him. She didn't even look angry. She just stared at him, like she had known this moment would come. I told you, she said quietly, not to go beyond the walls. Daniel opened his mouth, but no words came. I had hoped, she said, taking a few steps closer, that you would never see this. Not yet. What is this place? He finally asked, voice trembling. Her gaze shifted to the tank, then back to him. This is where they tried to make me a weapon, she said. This is where I stopped being a daughter of Vorax and became, this. Daniel looked into her eyes, and for the first time saw the pain clearly, not hidden, not masked, just raw and quiet. I'm sorry, he whispered. Soraya looked away, as if those two words had cut deeper than any blade. I didn't want a husband, she said, softly, but they gave me one, hoping it would calm the thing they created. She paused, her voice breaking for the first time. I didn't expect him to be kind. The air between them was heavy. Daniel wanted to reach out, but didn't. He knew she was still fighting. Something inside memories, guilt, fear, maybe all of it. "You should return to the chamber," she said at last. "I will seal this place again." Daniel nodded. But before he turned, he looked once more at the damaged figure in the tank. "I won't run," he said. "Whatever they made you, whatever you became, I won't run." Soraya didn't reply, but her glowing scars pulsed softly, like a heartbeat trying to remember how to trust as Daniel stepped back through the hidden tunnel. The walls seemed less cold. The palace still held secrets, yes. But he had touched one of them, and still he stayed. The next day. Soraya didn't return to the chamber. Her absence stretched through morning, noon, and into the strange purple twilight of her planet. The silence began to feel different now. Peaceful, but sharp, like something watching from the shadows. Daniel waited, thinking she might come back the way she always did, silent, sudden, with glowing eyes and quiet breath. But the room remained empty. Then, without warning, the guards arrived. Their steps were loud this time, urgent, not calm like before. They entered the chamber and told Daniel to follow. Offering no explanation, one of them handed him a cloak. "Black with silver lining, you are to attend the tribunal." One said, "By your wife's request, tribunal." The word echoed in his head. He followed the guards through long halls he hadn't seen before, halls that were darker, colder. Made of old metal and humming walls, something beneath the palace had awakened. He could feel it. They led him to a great circular room filled with tall alien figures seated in shadows. The center was open, lit by a single beam of golden light, and standing in that light was Soraya, without her robe, without her veil. Wearing only her scars, her expression was calm, but her eyes burned bright. The marks across her skin pulsed like ancient runes, alive with pain and purpose. One of the council members, taller than the rest, spoke first. "Soraya of House Varix, you stand before us accused of violating the genetic boundaries." Daniel didn't understand all of it, but he felt the cold in their words. Another voice followed. "You are not what you were born to be, and you brought a human into our circle, into our bloodline." Soraya didn't flinch. Her voice, clear and steady, answered, "I did what none of you had the courage to do." She pointed to Daniel. "He is not a tool, not a test subject, not a spy. He is my husband." The council whispered among themselves. One of them leaned forward and said, "You were warned that your union might awaken the dormant code." Daniel stepped forward without thinking. "I don't care what code she carries," he said loudly. "She is more human than any of you." The chamber fell silent. Even Soraya looked surprised. Just for a second. Then, from above, a screen unfolded showing images, blurry recordings of Soraya in battle. She was fighting dozens alone, her body glowing, her movements inhumanly fast. In one clip, she screamed and the walls around her melted. The caption said, "Weapon protocol active." Daniel couldn't look away. He knew what he was seeing: power, rage, trauma. But he also saw something else. He saw a woman who had been used, changed, and still chose kindness when she didn't have to. "Do you regret marrying her now?" One council member asked him directly. Daniel didn't hesitate. "No. I regret not meeting her sooner." Gasps echoed through the chamber. Soraya's glowing marks flickered wildly, but this time not with anger, something else: shock, emotion. The council stood together and issued a final warning. "If her body begins to change again, we will not stop the termination order." After that, Daniel and Soraya were escorted back in silence. The walk through the halls felt longer now, heavier. When they entered the chamber again, Soraya didn't speak. She sat by the window, back turned. Daniel sat beside her, not close, but near enough. Finally, she whispered, "I didn't ask for you because I wanted company." He waited. I asked for you. Because I wanted to prove I wasn't broken, Daniel turned his head slowly. Then, let me help you prove it. She looked at him, eyes wet, but not crying. A small light blinked on her wrist, then another on his. 2 pulses, now in sync, somewhere. Deep in the palace, machines stirred to life, and beyond the planet's red sky. Something ancient turned its attention toward them. Neither of them knew what was coming. But Soraya no longer looked like a weapon. She looked like someone ready to fight for something that finally mattered. The scream didn't sound human. It tore through the palace walls like lightning. Setting off alarms Daniel didn't even know existed. He shot up from the bed, breath heavy, ears ringing. The room pulsed red now, the soft crystals replaced by flashing warnings. He rushed toward the main door, but it had already opened. Soraya stood there, but barely. Her eyes were glowing, her body shaking. Her hands clutching her side like something inside her was burning through. Daniel, she said, voice hoarse, don't touch me, but he stepped forward anyway. She dropped to one knee, and the markings along her arms flared like wildfire. It looked like her body was rejecting itself. He dropped beside her, wrapping his arms around her despite her warning. Her skin was hot like metal, but he held on. Tell me what's happening, he begged. I thought the transformation was over. She looked up at him with wide eyes, the kind that belonged to someone about to drown. They lied, she whispered. The code was never dormant. It was only waiting in the distance. The alarm stopped. The silence that followed was worse. Guards burst into the room, weapons raised, but they didn't point them at Daniel. They aimed at Soraya. Step away. Human, one barked. She is unstable. Daniel stood slowly, placing himself between Soraya and the soldiers. You said she could live free. You said the tests were over, one of the guards muttered. That was before the pulse. Before the code triggered, they advanced, but Soraya rose to her feet behind him. Her voice was low, sharp, and filled with control. I am not your experiment anymore. The glow on her skin pulsed once, and every light in the chamber flickered. One of the soldiers stumbled back, eyes wide. She's sinking. He shouted, she's sinking with the old system. Daniel turned to her. What does that mean? She looked at him slowly, pain clear in every movement. It means I'm no longer a test subject, Daniel, she said. I'm becoming what they built me to be. A hidden panel opened in the wall with a loud hiss. Inside was a weapon unlike anything Daniel had ever seen, black, curved, alive with light. Soraya stared at it like it was part of her. I was designed to be a last resort, she said. A shield for the Vorax bloodline. A monster, if necessary. Daniel stepped closer to her. You don't have to become a monster, he said. She looked down at her hands, at the glow rising from her veins. But what if the only way to survive is to stop pretending I'm not? A sudden explosion rocked the palace, throwing everyone to the ground. The room tilted. Smoke pouring from the halls beyond. An unseen voice boomed over the speakers. Containment breach in known vessel has landed, Dextream threat level. Soraya's face went still. It's them, she said coldly. Daniel asked, who? She met his eyes. The ones who started the program. She said, the ones who wanted to finish me. Outside, the red skies filled with black ships, shaped like knives and glowing with cruel symbols as the first wave of invaders stormed. The outer towers, Saria turned toward Daniel. If you want to leave, do it now, she said. I won't hold it against you. He shook his head. I didn't marry you to run away. She didn't smile, but her eyes softened for a second. Then she lifted the black weapon from its case. The lights along the barrel synced with the ones glowing across her skin. It was a match. It was made for her. Daniel grabbed the spare gear the guards left behind. He had no training with alien weapons, but he knew how to survive, and right now, survival meant standing beside her. Soraya walked forward first, her steps. Slow but steady, Daniel followed her into the smoke-filled corridor. Behind them, the chamber door sealed shut. Ahead of them, war waited. The hybrid and the human were no longer just a secret marriage. They were now the last chance the palace had. And as the alien soldiers marched closer, Soraya whispered, not to Daniel, not to the guards, but to herself. No more hiding, no more silence. Then her markings lit up like stars, and the real fight began. The air was thick with smoke and heat. The sound of clashing metal and alien war cries echoed through the palace halls. Daniel could hardly believe what was happening. One moment he was just a man who married a stranger. The next, he was fighting beside a warrior whose power seemed to bend the very air. Soraya moved like lightning, her glowing scars pulsing with each strike. Her weapon hummed with energy, cutting through enemy ranks like a storm. Daniel fired blindly, covering her back. He was no soldier, but fear sharpened his senses. He dodged blasts and swung a heavy pipe when he had no ammo left. At one point, an enemy appeared behind Daniel, a tall alien with blades for hands. Daniel barely turned before the creature struck. Pain exploded in his side. He fell to the ground, gasping. Darkness edged his vision. Then a strong hand grabbed him by the collar. Soraya pulled him up without hesitation. "You're not done yet," she said fiercely, her eyes locked on his. Fierce and full of fire. "Stay with me." Daniel nodded. Biting back the pain, together they fought forward. The invaders seemed endless. But Soraya's strength grew, and Daniel felt a strange warmth spreading through his chest. Like her power was touching him, making him stronger, braver. They reached a chamber where the attackers were regrouping. Soraya raised her weapon and charged. Daniel followed close, yelling a battle cry he didn't know he had. The enemy broke under their fury. One by one, they fell after the fight. Daniel looked at Soraya. Her breathing was heavy, but her eyes shone with something new: hope, maybe even trust. She touched his cheek gently. "I never thought I would want a husband," she whispered, "but now I can't imagine losing you." Daniel smiled despite the pain. He had married a mystery, a fighter, a woman with secrets and scars. But now he saw something else. She was his family, his reason to fight. Outside the shattered windows, the alien sky was quiet again. But Daniel knew the war was far from over. Together, they would face whatever came next, because for the first time they were not alone. The great hall was filled with silence. The alien council watched carefully as Daniel stepped forward. All eyes were on him, waiting for his answer. They asked if he regretted marrying Soraya, if he wished to undo the bond that shocked their world. Daniel looked at Soraya standing tall beside him. Her scars no longer glowed with pain, but with calm strength. He saw not a weapon, but a woman who had fought for every moment of her life. He took a deep breath and spoke. "I don't regret it," he said clearly. "I regret I did not meet her sooner. She is not broken. She is not a weapon. She is my wife, my partner, and my home." Murmurs filled the hall. Some council members whispered, others stared in disbelief. But Daniel's voice did not waver. He continued, "This marriage is not just a union of blood. It is proof that even those made to suffer can choose hope. We are stronger together, and I will fight to protect her and this world, no matter what comes." Soraya stepped forward then. Her voice steady and proud, she told the council of the pain she endured. The experiments, the lies. She spoke of Daniel's kindness, his courage, and how he saved her from darkness for the first time. The council saw her not as a weapon, but as a person. The chamber grew still. Then the leader of the council spoke. "Your bond is unusual, but it is real. We accept you both. Let this day mark the beginning of a new era." Daniel and Soraya joined hands. A warm light surrounded them. The scars on her skin faded into faint lines. Like memories becoming stories. Outside, the twin moons shone brighter than ever. For the first time in a long time, Daniel felt peace. He had married a stranger without knowing her face, but he found a wife, a warrior, and a future. And he had no regrets. Together, they walked out of the chamber, into a world that was waiting to be healed. A world where hope could grow from even the deepest scars. Their story was just beginning.